What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Logos Podcast. This is Max.
This is Joey.
And on today's episode, we've got something cooking as we always do because we cook in here all the time.
I made some soup last night.
No, you didn't.
I did.
Really?
My sisters and my buddies, we've been every Monday night this year, this fall and winter, having soup night. And typically my sister makes the soup.
Which I hear she's a good cook.
She's a great cook. I mean, she's incredible. The last 2 weeks, though, she's been busy working, and Mondays have been my off days, so I've taken it on. Last week, I made a really good soup. Italian sausage and zucchini soup.
Nice.
Yesterday, the soup was not as good.
Sorry, man.
It was not bad. I had it again today for lunch because there was tons of leftovers because not as many people ate it.
I'm sorry, dude.
But I was cooking soup last night. We're going to be cooking on this podcast right now. So
yes, right. So if y'all just
hope
bring
you're
in
hungry.
the celery and the steak, please. I don't know what you're supposed to do with celery and steak, but you're gonna do something. All right, guys. Today's episode is gonna be about CHAT GPT, AI systems, open AI systems, virtual reality, the MetaVerse, and just in general the scope of technology,
and
how the church,
transhumanism,
and how the church is supposed to engage that.
Some ideas, some thoughts that we have about these things as they are coming out, we're being confronted with them. They're starting to make a wave on social media and out there in the world. So we've been thinking about them, and we want to talk about them to maybe help you think about them, so that you can keep talking about them,
and so that we can keep thinking about them, and so that you can keep thinking about them.
Before we go anywhere with this conversation, obviously we need to remind you to go to patreon.com/logospodcast, where you can become a monthly donor, supporter of our project. You can donate like $5 or $10 or however much you want to donate.
Yeah.
That'd be really helpful for us. You could also go to anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcast, Spotify, the Google Play Store. You can find, is that where they
it's
go?
Google Podcast, but
Google Podcast.
Joey's trying,
Yeah, I'm doing my best. I've never used a Samsung device, so that's
good. That's a compliment.
But anyway, give us a 5-star review, or maybe 4.5 stars. If there's something you'd like to see improved, don't give us a review less than that, please. And then write us a review too. Yeah. That'd be helpful.
It is actually super helpful to get some feedback through Instagram, through our email, through a website, just to see what we can improve on, what you would like to see more of.
Yeah, like if you ever thought, man, I really need help thinking about this topic.
Or, hey, I really wish Max would shut up.
Yeah.
That's also.
So you can just ask me specifically to talk about something if you're tired of me hearing him, and I'll do a solo episode. That'd be terrible. So that's all the reminders we have. Thank you to our current donors and subscribers.
Yes, 100%.
In fact, thank you to our most recent donor, whose name is
Deacon Bill Rimmert. Yeah,
thank you, Deacon Bill. Sincerely, you'll be hearing from us soon. But we just are so appreciative of your support of Logos Podcast, so that we can continue this project, hopefully to glorify God and build His kingdom in a small way. So
not a large way.
Well, I mean, if it be His will.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, why do we want to talk about CHAT GPT and open AI and AI and all this stuff?
It's a big question, Joey. So are you interviewing me?
Yeah, this is an interview.
Okay. Thank you for having me on, Joey.
Did you bring your resume, by the way?
I did, but I don't think I need it.
Okay. You're just going to wow me.
Just going to wow you. Exactly.
Okay.
I am the resume. So
you're hired.
I think the reason that we want to enter and engage this conversation is first and foremost because the churches always engage the modern world, right? And it's been at the forefront of communication with
reading the signs of the times.
Right. And there's always the difficulty, right, and the challenge that, okay, so how does the church remain faithful to her orthodoxy while also engaging this consistent, progressive world, secular world? So there's just thin line of like we both want to engage it, but also stay true to our beliefs and our principles. But I think as we're kind of on the dawn of the movement of artificial intelligence, I think it's important that while we will not have the answers to every question, we will at least begin the discussion and propose it to you all as a way to start thinking about things, start thinking about these technologies that are influencing our generations, that are having a major impact on our society, and that affect our everyday life. Right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So we just want to kind of start having this conversation. I know I first CHAT GPT in particular, which we'll talk about more specifically a little later, but I first heard of that on this YouTube video. It was like Jordan Peterson describes CHAT GPT. There's this really dramatic like background music to this video, and Jordan Peterson's being interviewed.
Classic Jordan
in
Peterson.
his really like solemn, like hard thinking way. And he was like, well, I can tell you why you should care about CHAT GPT. It's because it's smarter than you. And soon it's going to be a lot smarter than you. And he was like explaining some of its features. And so initially I hear that. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. That's new that there's this computer system, this AI system that's, more sophisticated than, or has the potential to be more sophisticated than anything we've seen before, and is going to maybe change the way we live our lives.
Sure.
So that's when I was like, man, we should start talking about this, start thinking about it.
My first exposure was, I think was Alex Fridman, or Lex Fridman, I should say.
Lex Fridman, yeah.
I'm sorry, Lex Fridman and Joe Rogan talking about...
Was Joe Rogan on the Lex Fridman show, or was Lex Fridman?
It was the other way around.
Lex Fridman was on the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah.
And Lex Fridman's whole shtick is like he's trying to create artificial... His podcast is called like the AI podcast.
Yeah.
Like I think that's his like passion.
That's his whole thing. And so I first came in contact with the model of OpenAI through that, and then ChatGPT was promoted, and then through that episode, just some of its potentiality. And at the time, it was just kind of in its embryonic stages, and I think it's still in its embryonic stages. And those who have kind of promoted it and used it, are would be in agreement with that. It's still developing.
It has limits,
right? And it's only a little over a month in the public sphere. So we'll see a lot of improvements and a lot of kind of development in this system.
Yeah, and so that's the first reason that just ChatGPT, some of these AI systems are kind of coming onto the scene. That's why we want to address it. But the second reason I would say is that with these new developments in technology, you get a lot of voices out there who like transhumanists.
Yeah.
With these transhumanist type of suggestions. And what is transhumanism? People want to like go beyond what human beings are capable of right now, right? So they want to, through technology, through artificial intelligence, through medical advancements, they want to initiate the next stage in human evolution, even maybe getting to like a post-human world, right? In which we've literally crossed the border of humanity, and we've taken the next evolutionary leap into this more sophisticated technological species. And
this is rhetoric you hear all the time, right? Like if you're on YouTube or any social media platform, which most people are, you hear that kind of rhetoric all the time. Like, hey, this is like a great progressive thing in the stage of human development. This is a benchmark. This is a climax. What we can't fathom the developments and benefits these things will cause. But I think we also need to consider the adverse effects, which we'll talk about throughout the episode, right?
Yeah, and where does the gospel come into that whole discussion,
or truth itself,
right?
The person of Jesus Christ. How do we engage the technological advancement and also stay true to the principles that guide human existence that was created by God.
Yeah, and then the last thing is like in the past with some of these suggestions about like robots, artificial intelligence, extending human life indefinitely, like some of these suggestions, they've seemed really like sci-fi-y and like not worth taking seriously. But there's big names taking this stuff very seriously right now, right? So like...
Can I propose a few names?
Yeah, please.
So as a proposition here, we got, for example, Eric Schmidt, who is an accomplished technologist, entrepreneur, and philanthropist as Google's chief executive officer.
Yeah, and I think he's like a transhumanist too. I was hearing something about him like has some pretty radical ideas, I think, even about the future of humanity and our technological advancement. And he's like the CEO of Google. Yeah,
and he also is like kind of the one that made it big time in Silicon Valley, from a little startup to one of the leading technological softwares in the world.
Yeah, so
he's in there. Henry Kissinger, who actually served as U.S. Secretary of State and an assistant of the President of the National Security, and has a Nobel Peace Prize Award, Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Medal of Liberties on here. You have this guy, Neil Postman, who I'm not sure who he is. He's just
like a cultural critic
Yeah.
from maybe the 1900s. I don't think he's still alive.
Right,
I could be wrong about that.
But this book is made some waves in the New York Times.
That book is called Technopoly.
Yeah, and so that's another big name. And then here we have a University of Stanford OCD psychologists and psychiatrists who Elias. I'm going to butcher this last name. I'm sorry.
Do it. Butcher it hard.
Okay, you got it. It's ready. Abu Jaude. I'm sorry.
That's absolutely how you say it.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but my point is, you have these authors kind of from a medical field, from a technological field, from a national security field.
Yeah, politicians.
Yeah,
I mean, people are
talking about it.
Seriously.
Right? And I think there's a serious discussion to be had by the church on this.
Yeah.
And
the church is, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so the church has engaged this, right? So Pope Francis met with Eric Schmidt, I think, and Mark Zuckerberg, and Brad Smith, right, Microsoft, within the last 5 years to discuss some of the matters, right? And we'll lay out some of the guidelines of those conversations. But my point is that the church is not like completely naive from this or completely detached from this. In fact, I think the papal household has hosted large scientists and contributors to these technological systems. Again, we say all of this to say that like there's a dialogue to be had here, and
it's important for Christians, even I think for normal believers who are out there in the world who are going to be experiencing the effects of these changes to start getting a lay of the groundwork, thinking about these things. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Sure.
So to start that conversation more formally, we wanted to just first take a step back and just talk about technology in general.
Sure.
Right? Because all these are new forms of technology, and a lot of people use the term technology a lot, but don't really think deeply about what it is.
Yeah.
So the word technology, literally, like what is technology? It comes from the Greek techne and logia, right? So techne.
So here's the thing, Joey just wanted to mention Greek.
Now like, you guys think I'm so smart, and that's really the point of this podcast is for you guys to
believe Joey,
like me a lot, and think I'm intelligent. But yeah, techne and logia. So like logia, logos, that like the reason, the meaning, the study of. I mean, all these things. So literally, techne is to do or to make. So it's like technology is right reason with regard to making things.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, we think technology, we automatically think devices, but really, like something as simple as a book. That's a form of technology, right? Yeah. Something as simple as like a pencil. That was something that was constructed by the human mind, applying reason to the material world in order to construct it in such a way that we can use it. And so
some of the primitive examples of technology is just simply as something as simple as writing with a rock in a cave.
Yeah, or like a wheel, like these things. Yeah. So all that to say, technology in and of itself is not like an evil thing. No. Nor is it like a morally virtuous thing. It's what it is it's by using technology, man has the capacity to participate in the act of creation, right? Because God, through his wisdom, his eternal wisdom, from his mind, he creates the world, but he gives human beings the dignity of being true causes in the world. And we can use our intellects, our minds that are gifts from him in order to also form the world, to uncover its mysteries, to come to know it, and to create these tools, these technologies, using our reason. And because of that, technology can be very good,
right?
And often is very, very good.
Yeah, and I think in line with that thought process, and precisely because it has to do with the right reasoning in regards to making or doing of things, it's subordinate to man. Right?
Yeah.
So technology.
Flesh that out. What do you mean?
Right. So like when we talk about technology having to do with the making of things, man is the only one capable of kind of uttering rationale into the process of making or doing things.
Yeah, rationally shaping the material.
And so the pencil, as you use an example, is to serve man's needs, such as writing something, right? The camera is a tool for man to better engage, the internet softwares or YouTube or whatever, right? So all of technology is for the purpose of serving man.
And insofar as it is good and true and beautiful, it is doing that. It's being used to serve man. As soon as it becomes destructive of humanity in any way, that's when technology becomes truly problematic.
And this is one of the big kind of conversations right now. It's like, wait a second, is technology kind of a morally grave thing at all. Well, yeah, because man uses it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And man, when he acts morally.
Always.
And so in that sense, now technology has some sort of moral gravity to
Moral
it,
value,
right?
yeah.
And so that's also another reason why we need to keep in mind that technology is for man, because all of a sudden it takes on a new meaning when man engages it.
Yeah, so obviously technology, right reason with regard to making things that human beings use their minds to create and hopefully, enhance and help human beings flourish. But it can also be used poorly. And this is one point we wanted to make, just like a brief kind of historical survey of some big technologies. It's like technology, whatever it is, whether it's used for good or evil, it always completely changes the fabric of society, right? So if you think of something like the printing press, like once the printing press, I forget exactly when the printing press was created.
How dare you, Joey?
I'm going to look it up because I want to remember.
It's kind of important.
And are you going to get it first?
We'll have to find out. I got you.
1436. Johannes Gutenberg.
How could we forget that? That was like ingrained in our hearts.
Sorry, Dr. Graff. Anyways, though, like everything changed when the printing press came into existence. Like now people had access to text. Now people and Neil Postman in that book Technopoly, he actually makes this remark, and he uses the printing press as an example. When a new technology is inserted into the culture, it's not like you have like the old culture as it used to be, plus the addition of this new technology. What you now have is this totally new culture. Why? Because the technology integrates itself into all the different the fabric of society. It's kind of like an ecosystem.
Yeah.
If you have an ecosystem and you introduce a new animal or plant into it, the different connections that animal or plant is going to make with everything else in the ecosystem transforms everything. And the same thing is true of technology. And we see that with the printing press. Like the face of Europe totally changed after the printing press. The amount of information that could be disseminated, the literacy rates that people had access to now, like people could read and write and become more literate. But so those were maybe some of the good things that came about through the printing press, right? But like with any technology, there's also like a shadow side, right? And a potential. So like what were some of the negative impacts of the printing press?
Well, so like just to move it a little, kind of looking ahead. So like the printing press then later became a book, which later then became like the internet. Right. So was used to abstract all those things. Right. And so like there's been like a big gap and a huge development, like getting to those steps. But I mean, some of the immediate negative effects of the printing press particularly are error.
Right. The dissemination of heresy, error.
Detraction. Right. Gossiping, lying, yellow journalism.
Right.
Like these kinds of things all of a sudden became prominent. And so like, okay, now we can all get information. Yes, but we also are, at the same time our literacy is growing, we're also having more dishonest claims. And that's also detrimental.
Yeah, propaganda now is a thing. And also, this is something that I think about a lot. It's like memory, like our memory, because we see this today with like social media. Most of us our attention span and our memories are so short because we're habituated to watching these 30-second videos, and that's what we're imbibing all the time.
Yeah.
But with the printing press, it's like, okay, now that everyone has access to these texts, the oral tradition that used to be so ingrained within human culture, in which people could memorize just like huge chunks of text and transmit it orally with great accuracy. Now, because we have this new technology that's helping us in many respects, we're also becoming less capable of that real human skill that we used to have, which is memory, oral
development of memory.
Right. So that happens with all technologies. Good things come in, but then there's also a lot of potentially and actually negative side effects. So
and I just kind of just throwing this out there, ironically, I wonder if things like iPads have actually helped our literacy rate or not.
Oh yeah, like what do you mean?
Yeah, just like, so we have access to books and a plethora of information, but do we actually engage it objectively sometimes?
Yeah. And I see now, like in schools, kids are given iPads a lot of times to take, like they don't have textbooks anymore. They have iPads. Yeah. So, okay, benefit of that, you're wasting less paper, I suppose. Sure. It's more efficient. There might be some things that you can do on an iPad that you couldn't have done with a textbook. But also there's studies like kids don't learn as well when it's on a screen. Like kids learn human beings learn much better when it's a physical paper and pen and they're actually writing, and even there's a difference between writing on like an iPad Surface with an Apple Pencil and writing on a real book.
Yeah,
so it's
lead to a piece of paper.
Right. So it's like there's pros and cons really to all forms of technology. There's trade-offs that the more we become dependent upon these technologies, often the more times we become less capable in other areas of life.
John Sr. makes an observation that
John Sr. Who's John Sr.?
John Sr. He wrote the book, The Destruction of the Christian Culture and then the Restoration of the Christian Culture.
Is he the one who founded the Chesterton Academy?
I think so. And
down
also,
in,
yes.
Wherever that is.
And also the Clear Creek Abbey is big time influenced by his school of thought. But one of the points he makes is that for example, he uses electricity. We got electricity, but also the rates of murder went up because all of a sudden the streets became illuminated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's again, this is just to kind of overemphasize the point here that there's a destructive aspect to this kind of evolutionary step. We went from spears.
Yeah.
World War I. We have huge waves of men dying because tear gas is now popular.
Tear gas, yeah.
Right? Modern weapons machine guns are being developed, right? The trench warfare. My point is that it's not just every invention, every progressive thing is a good outcome. And I think it's important to keep in mind as we talk about technology because like Joey's emphasized time and time again, there's negative outcomes to this too.
Yeah, and they can all be used. What's annoying about them is even for the benefits of technology seem to necessarily bring with them drawbacks. Like we become dependent on them, like Google Maps. I can't navigate by myself at all. I totally don't have that human skill that I would have had to develop had I never been able to rely on Google Maps.
So medicine.
But medicine, although drawbacks to, I would say this. Okay, so penicillin, the discovery of penicillin,
Novocaine,
all these things that have significantly increased the quality of human life.
Yeah.
So really, really good. That's technology.
Ibuprofen. Thanks be to God for ibuprofen.
That's technology doing its job.
Yeah.
But then what do we now see too? And in a lot of fields of medicine is this a lot of people, they'll be experiencing some sort of infirmity, and instead of doing the hard work to actually get to the cause of the problem, hey, maybe you need to exercise more, or maybe you need to make significant dietary changes. A lot of times what we're doing now is we're relying on modern medicine, which is really sophisticated, to just treat the symptom.
Yeah.
Like a Band-Aid, we're covering up the problem.
Sure.
Right. And so you don't actually get to the root of the problem, and then you take maybe medicines that make the pain go away or something like that, but the problem itself isn't actually rooted out.
And you have larger effects like the pharmaceutical industry, right, on a cultural level.
Yeah.
Injustices there. And so and there's also for example, addiction to drug goes up.
Yeah.
Drug inventions go up.
Yeah.
Right. Research centers become corrupt. Universities start doing bad things in order to develop something that's produces a lot of money and honor and all of these things. Again, just to consider, there are great benefits. We're not here to deny the truths of technology and the goods that technology has. And again, in and of itself, technologies are neutral. It's when man uses them for his own means and in certain ways and with certain intentions that they become then morally valuable.
I just thought of another one before.
Hurry up, dude.
I know, but cars.
Oh, yes.
Cars, right? So now we can get around. We can cover great distances and see more places, but also there's tons of car accidents.
Yeah.
Also, people aren't living as contemplative lives because they're not walking from place to place. They're going 60 miles an hour, not taking a minute to take in the landscape, right? Yeah. So all this to say that as Christians, we need to be really, I think, vigilant about carefully discerning the way that we're using technology, the way we're allowing it to affect us personally, spiritually, and the way we're using it to either build up the kingdom of God and defend the dignity of the human person, or are we working against those ends? So these are questions as Christians that we need to be keeping in mind as we think about some of these things.
Yeah.
So should we talk about CHAT GPT more specifically?
Yeah, I think so. CHAT GPT is kind of the new kid on the block. Everybody's talking about him. Everybody's using CHAT GPT, just at least playing with it. Right now it's kind of just a little, almost like a toy game kind of thing, on a popular scale, but by those that created it, it's a revolutionary tool. It's a revolutionary tool. And actually, funnily enough, I used CHAT GPT to help me define what CHAT GPT was.
Dude, how dare you?
It's about to define itself.
Yeah, okay, so let's see what CHAT GPT calls itself.
All right, CHAT GPT is a conversational language model developed by OpenAI, which is a company name, and also, I believe, the software by which it functions. It is based on a GPT-03 generative pre-trained transformer architecture and is trained on a large data set of conversational text. It can generate human-like text for a wide range of conversational contexts, such as answering questions, responding to prompts, and generating creative writing. Generating creative writing.
It can write.
It can write, and it can also probably read better than me. ChatGPT can be used for various applications such as creating chatbots, automated customer service, and AI-powered writing assistants. Though the analogy that I keep using, it's like a sort of pseudo conscious. It's like a computer consciousness that stores information and allows, as it says, to have a conversational model with this OpenAI system that is ChatGPT. People can go on and think about it like a Google search that you can go on and, ask a question. What are you? Who made you? And all of a sudden it'll spit out data. I ask questions like, who was, does God exist? Who was the author of the book of Exodus? Which is said was Moses, which is funny because
a lot of scripture scholars will contest that. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's this artificial intelligence program that you can kind of have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And that has access to this data set of, from what I understand, just like huge amounts of text, like that it can draw from the internet. So almost unlimited amounts of text, and it can integrate that text into its system and use that to produce a conversation with you. And I could be wrong about this, but I think it can actually pick up on the style in which you are like writing and like mimic that.
Yeah.
And use different data points in order to replicate that and communicate with you even on a more seemingly natural level.
Right. And it can produce pretty elaborate answers, given that it's only been out for, I think, maybe a month, top 2 months as, again, in a public use. But as ChatGPT gets more popularized, universities are speaking out against it.
Yeah.
There's serious issues of like plagiarism. There's also, just yesterday, I saw that, or maybe a couple of days ago, a ChatGPT system or OpenAI system passed a test from the University of Pennsylvania's School of Business, Wharton School, passed one of their major tests, major exams, and Wharton is one of the supreme business schools of the U.S., and so that's a pretty significant step for the OpenAI industry here, which does vary from AI, artificial intelligence, as it's known more widely. In what way? It's my understanding that OpenAI, unlike AI, is kind of, as Joey said, it's open to all of the information that's out there, right? So whereas before the artificial intelligence would have pre-coded messages and pre-coded data to engage the different systems, OpenAI was also pre-coded, but left to its own facility to go out into the internet and search.
So they programmed into it the capacity to go obtain more data on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to be putting in more data into it in order for it to spit out a certain output.
Exactly.
It can actually do something that looks a lot like learning.
Yeah.
And obtaining more information, which is, it's crazy. It's pretty legit.
And I want to kind of read, unless we think that this AI stuff is just some sort of post-apocalyptic scientific, Terminator-esque science fiction thing.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's a major shift. Again, people like Eric Schmidt are talking about it, CEO of Google. These are serious people thinking about this. And I actually bought this book.
What's it called?
It's called The Age of AI and Our Human Future. National bestseller. So if you want to check it out, a little plug for them. I thought I did a pretty good job of being objective with an analysis of AI. Obviously, as it is that these authors are writing, they're kind of promoting AI,
their own stuff.
Yeah, but I think for the most part being pretty fair with it in its analysis. Good. But as I read this, I want you to keep in mind that AI isn't simply about kind of helping us have better work lives or facilitating our access to information. It's a complete shift in our engagement with reality as human beings. And I'm going to read this paragraph or so from this book to kind of help emphasize that point. AI is not an industry, let alone a single product. In strategic parlance, it is not a domain. It is an enabler of many industries and facets of human life: scientific research, education, manufacturing, logistics, transportation, defense, law enforcement, politics, advertising, art, culture, and more. The characteristics of AI, including its capacity to learn, evolve, and surprise, will disrupt and transform them all. Listen to this. The outcome will be the alteration of human identity and the human experience of reality at levels not experienced since the dawn of the modern age. Notice here that AI then isn't simply a new technology. It's also a sort of new epistemological way to view the world.
Epistemological, that's a big word.
Actually, it is. So it's a new way to know reality. So epistemology is to know things, right? To know the meaning of things.
The study of how we know is
right.
Epistemology. So it's bringing with it, what does it mean to know? Like these questions. What does it mean to know something? What does it mean to be rational? Because now we have these programs, these machines that are doing things that look, for all intents and purposes, like what we rational creatures do, which is dialogue, which is have conversation, which is communicate using language. Now we have these robots, these programs doing that. So it brings with it these questions of like, okay, what does it mean to be rational? Like, is this program a rational creature? Is it conscious? Does it have, like, because it has these language capabilities, like, does it have a mind? Like, what do we think about this?
Yeah, and these are major questions.
Yeah,
like all of a sudden the question becomes, what distinguishes human consciousness from a computer, quote unquote, consciousness?
Yeah, if you can even call it consciousness,
exactly. Right, and so I mean, it's a serious question that I don't think we have the answer to, and I don't think the answer will be solidified for several more years. But I think the discussion about it is important.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts about some of those questions just as we're talking about them right now.
Go ahead.
First, it seems to me that AI, CHAT GPT, something to that effect, even if it can communicate with me, is not itself conscious. It's not self-aware.
It's not.
Even if it can define itself. Mm-hmm. It's only defining itself using data that ultimately has been provided to it by human beings. Maybe not directly, but through its access to what human beings have written on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't seem to be conscious. We wouldn't call it irrational. We wouldn't say
conscious in the sense that,
like, self-aware.
Right. It's not able to produce on its own information.
Yeah, okay. And it can't also do things like abstract.
Exactly.
It can't like.
Yeah, that would be my argument.
It can't like think about universals. Like it can't like think about what it means to be a human being. It can't like think about God.
It also can't love.
It can give. It can't love. It's not. It can't be in real relation to others or to God. So you'll hear. I mean, people envisioning one day of like us being able to, I don't know, upload our consciousness onto a robot. So and like we becoming a civilization of artificial intelligence walking around with, but like CHAT GPT, artificial intelligence. It's precisely that. It's artificial, and it's not. CHAT GPT is not a person. It's not in relation to God. It's not in relation to others. Even though I can communicate with it in a certain sense.
Yeah.
So those are some initial thoughts I would have.
Let me.
It doesn't have a mind. You know, it's like human beings. We have an immaterial mind. That's that it's a power of our soul. CHAT GPT doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have this immaterial animating principle like a human being or even like an animal, right?
I don't know. It depends on what you mean, like a animating principle in the sense that like self-development, growth, rationality, and self-nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, right. It can't do that. It can't
exactly. Yeah, so like that's a serious concern. Like, what is a soul?
Right.
Like, right. And so again, there's this very materialistic view of what consciousness is, right? To us, consciousness includes man and all of that he is, which includes the soul, which isn't limited to the material world.
Yeah.
Whereas something like even a very sophisticated artificial intelligence system does not have the powers of what we would say philosophically the soul, which is nutrition, growth, development, and rationality.
Rationality, yeah.
Right?
The capacity to know and to love.
Yeah. So
to enter into relation with others, with other persons.
And this is important too when we talk about GPT. I think this is very important. I don't know why I'm having trouble pulling it up on here, but behind CHAT GPT are major minds like Elon Musk.
Yeah, he wants to use it big time, right?
Yeah, but I think
AI in general.
Right. So Sam Altman is a big name. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Fried Hoffman, and Jessica Livingston. And this is behind OpenAI in general, right? So this is OpenAI as a company itself. But AI as a totality is, let me give you just another statistic here of numbers. Ready?
Yeah, please.
Okay. In 2020, American AI startups raised almost $38 billion in funding. Their Asian counterparts raised $25 billion. And their European counterparts raised $8 billion. 3 governments, the United States, China, and the European Union, have convened high-level commissions to study AI and report their findings. Again, I just do that to dramatize the point all the more, but to say that this is very important, and I think ChatGPT is one step in the direction of the AI sphere developing. And again, that is a language that you hear a lot. There's a progressive, very evolutionary view of reality and how man progresses.
And of human beings.
And of human beings, yeah.
And this is another implicit thing that you'll hear in a lot of the advocates of ChatGPT AI that we need to, as Christians, be aware of and also reject. It's like they think a lot of them are materialists, right? So they think that matter is all that there is, that human beings at base don't have an immaterial spiritual soul, but that we are really just super sophisticated ChatGPTs, right? We're super, so that we just don't understand yet. But that eventually, once we get down, once we advance in our technology and our understanding, eventually we'll be able to explain human beings completely in terms of their material parts that make them up, and then maybe even be able to replicate that, right? And then we'll be able to create AI that's like that pretty much is a human being, that is conscious, that is.
This is interesting with like the simulation theory you hear about all the time.
Talk to us about that,
right? So like, there's this idea, there's a simulation theory that. There is like some sort of creator or creators that kind of install computation code in, let's say, us as human beings, and have left us to our own accord to kind of mechanically operate in the world to create these things. And like the creators or creator or whatever has like wired us to live a certain way, and we're just living in this kind of almost like a commercial.
We're part of a science experiment.
Yeah, and one day we're going to wake up, we're going to die, and that's it. That's life. And the creators of this of the simulation are so far removed from this dimension that they're like to us where we would never be able to know or see them, and that they're living amongst us. I should say that they know what we're doing, but they're not actually attached to us. Kind of deistic view, kind of. But anyway, it's a very popular kind of theory amongst.
Scientifically minded, materialistic,
or even just like your common podcaster, like us. We love it. I'm just kidding, but all of a sudden, like those possibilities or that conversation becomes kind of serious, and there's some serious philosophical implications. To that level of conversation.
For the record, I don't think we're part of a science experiment. I do think there is a creator. I don't think he's scientifically programmed us to just be machines and die.
No, I think he
triune God.
He came, he lived, died amongst us.
Rose for us. And I've actually been thinking about this too, thinking about Blessed Luigi Cisani's criterion of reasonableness when assessing a proposition like this. Okay, I experience a proposition like that. Does that correspond to my reason's assessment of reality in all of its factors, right? That's the big thing. So it's like, okay, that's like a proposition that I suppose is like purely on a rationalistic level. It's like possible, but like, does it correspond to reality as I experience it in its totality? And it seems like no, when I reflect upon reality in its totality and my engagement with it, there is a part of me that's irreducible to my physical parts, right? I do have a mind that can know and can, it's not the mind that knows, it's the person that knows. But I have an immaterial soul, that I'm more than just the makeup of my physical parts. So
you know what Pope Benedict says?
I'd love to hear it.
When he's analyzing reality, he says the physical world is only a manifestation of the reality that's underlying it.
Yeah, it comes forth from what's more truly real, which is God, who is immaterial, spiritual.
Right. So, because we talk about this all the time. Like, even the most beautiful things in the world cannot synthesize the beauty of God.
They're just tiny refractions of His splendor.
And so, to go back to the conversation here, I think keeping in mind that even maybe OpenAI, CHAT GPT, being one of their kind of new innovations, even at its best, I think we'll be limited.
Hopefully it can.
Yeah.
Hopefully it can be used to enhance human life, right?
I think it will, and I think a lot of people who created it have with that intention in mind.
Intention, right?
Right.
But we're already seeing, so these universities who are outlawing it, it's like, okay, yeah, you can really obviously see, okay, if I have this program that can write an essay for me in 3 seconds, and I start to depend on that, I, as a human person, am going to become deficient in my ability to think and write and articulate myself. Yeah. I'm going to become less human, less rational. And so, again, that's another trade-off with these new forms of technology, which is why we need to, when we decide to use them and when they become integrated into our society, we need to do that carefully and very thoughtfully. Would now be a good time for me to read those 6 principles that Pope Francis and the smart people from the Vatican talked about?
Yeah, so Pope Francis had an interview with large contributors to the technological world, and it's not just his synthesis of like things that we should consider when engaging in the technical world. It's also Pope Benedict and JP2, and I think Pope John Paul the 23rd. Pope John the 23rd. It's kind of a synthesis of their school of thought of like, hey, these are some things when engaging the technical world we should keep in mind. Yeah. And these are these 6 rules that he's kind of laid out as of recently to keep in mind when doing so.
So it's a quote. It says, AI systems must be conceived, designed, and implemented to serve and protect human beings. And so there's these 6 kind of principles that Rome is calling for people who are involved in creating AI. These are ethical standards that Rome wants them to abide by in order to protect human dignity, so that this new and potentially very good form of technology does not become destructive of human dignity. So one is transparency. So in principle, AI systems should be explainable. I think that means they shouldn't be this thing that just the elite have access to or understanding of.
That's a good point, yeah. That's a good reflection.
2 is inclusion. So this is big. The needs of all human beings must be taken into consideration so that everyone can benefit and all individuals can be offered the best possible conditions to express themselves and develop. So with that, I see something like, and this happens all the time with technology, but a new form of technology is introduced, and initially, oftentimes, just those who are wealthy have access to it, right? And that puts them at even more of a competitive advantage over the poor and the marginalized who aren't going to have access to this type of technology from the outset. And so Rome is calling for, okay, when we're introducing these systems into our lives, we need to make sure we're not using them in such a way that is going to create even more disparity between the wealthy and the poor, between the potential oppressors and the oppressed. So number 3 is responsibility. Those who design and deploy the use of AI must proceed with responsibility and transparency. So that's pretty vague, but
that's kind of.
All right. So what's your thoughts on that?
So I think one thing is to keep in mind the ethical dimension of using technology.
Right. We're not just material beings, right? We have there is moral value to the way we use things.
And so to be responsible is to know that as human beings that use these things are necessarily attached to some of the effects and outcomes that these things produce. So that's one thing. Another thing, transparency. How often do you hear large corporations hiding information?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
And then it pops up on the news. Oh, by the way, what's that company that's not coming to mind? But anyways, how often do you see corporations all of a sudden come out with, they've been lying on their taxes, they've been lying on their databases, they've been hiding
using
emails.
These technologies in diabolical ways without making that
right.
known.
Or politicians use databases all the time to hide stuff, or you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
blackmail, these kinds of things. I think those are two things that we're trying to highlight here.
Number 4 is impartiality. Do not create or act according to bias, thus safeguarding fairness and human dignity. I don't have anything to say about that. Do you?
No.
Number 5, reliability. AI systems must be able to work reliably.
This is big time. So remember when PlayStation shut down and stole the credit card of anybody who was attached to it?
No.
Yeah, so that was a huge thing. I think it was Wells Fargo was attached. It was like the big bank that was attached to that. I just think just the only example that comes up. I'm sure there's more recent and better examples, but just as an example to show that like when something goes down, a lot of people go down with it. Especially we've been relying on it. So imagine this. Imagine that you have years of photos and data and information on, I don't know, let's say your Gmail. And all of a sudden one day it disappears.
Yeah.
Well, somebody has that somewhere.
Yeah.
In the cloud or wherever the crap it goes. Somebody has that information.
Or I'm thinking of what would happen if like the grid broke down, and everyone lost access to electricity and the internet.
Apocalyptic.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah, it would be
It'd
crazy.
be crazy.
Yeah.
So, and technology does fail every once in a while. So, and then finally, security and privacy. AI systems must work securely and respect the privacy of users. So that's a big
It's
one.
a major one, dude. And also think about AI systems starting to all of a sudden form fake identities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It starts all of a
Blackmailing.
sudden. Exactly. And so like
framing.
You see that already with how easy is it for a lawyer to pull up an old email or text that's out there that's all of a sudden used against you in court.
And now what if an AI system can completely create an email account and write a bunch of emails that sound like you and even create a video that looks a lot like you and talks a lot like you and use that in a court of law? It's like, okay, these things.
Nobody would do that with you though, because
I hope
you're
not.
ugly.
But so all of these, obviously they bring serious ethical considerations into mind as we start thinking about these technologies. Do you have something to say right now?
I just, Joey, the whole time we've been talking, and even as we kind of took the time to produce the episode and think about it, one of the things we keep hearing time and time again that these technological advancements are doing, what they're doing is in the name of progress. Right? It's a very, and that's a very Marxist. And the way it's used is very Marxist conception, which is to say progress is always a good thing. To move forward and to evolve or to take this leap into technology is a
especially material
progress
that we're tended towards some
exactly
sort of this worldly
liberation,
salvation,
exactly.
Liberation.
And so, but see, that's not the case. Not necessarily the way that the church views progress, because it's not limited to the material world.
Right.
Again, we're going to emphasize that point time and time
we need to
again.
be progressing towards God.
Exactly.
Our relationship with Him.
But there is also this weird tension, and what comes to mind is this quote by Saint John Henry Newman, right?
Yeah,
he writes,
read it.
"To live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often." Right? So there is this kind of, run the flower through the, what the crap do you call it?
I don't know, dude. You've lost
you know what
me.
I mean? It's like a little net thing that you run the flour through and you get the clumps out. Or what is the little thing called?
A cheesecloth. I learned what a cheesecloth was recently.
That's not that. What?
That's not what you're
Why
talking
would I
about,
put flour in a cheesecloth? I would put cheese in a cheesecloth.
Probably cheese. We'd go with cheesecloth. A
Anyways,
strainer.
Strainer. Put flour in a strainer, right? So it's like it's kind of there's a sort of.
Try my soup.
There's just the one that sucked yesterday.
Anyway.
But so there's this interesting paradox between like, okay, we need to hold on to what we're doing, but also, hey, check this out. There's this new thing on the board. How does it add to those truths which are already held? But the view is not just all steps in human development are necessarily positive ones. For example, as we talked about earlier, weapons.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when countries have access to literally demolishing and wiping countries off of the face of the earth, it's kind of scary.
Like we could destroy the whole planet right now.
Exactly.
With the weapons we have.
I mean, this kind of scary to think about. It's like, is that progress a good thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's defense.
Yeah,
sure,
because
but it's also at the cost of life potentially.
Right, so someone could argue advancing our technology and our weapons capabilities is a good thing because our weapons are getting more sophisticated, and that's cool. And it's like, okay, but like we could destroy the whole planet multiple times over right now. So is it that cool? Is that real progress? But so then there's a temptation to be like, okay, reject all technological progress, like spurn it all and just like go back to the Middle Ages where we can all just be peasants living without these technologies. Well, no, as St. John Cardinal Henry Newman says, to live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often. So like progress, development is a necessary part of human life. Learning to operate with these new technologies, which are inevitable, is a necessary part of the Christian life. And so it's just this middle ground. Not embracing technological progress for its own sake wholesale, but also not rejecting it wholesale, because it does have benefits, and it can enhance human life and human dignity.
And I think that's one of the wise things, at least, of the church, is that she doesn't just approach everything full-heartedly and embrace it all the time. There's people who within the church that try to do that, sure, but they oftentimes don't last very long in operating in the life of the church, because notice that it's not just one voice that accepts everything for the church. The Pope can speak and does speak on behalf of the church, but there's a body. The church is composed of people. There's different sources that things are coming in through. And even the founders of this country knew that one line of power is very dangerous. There's checks and balances within the country of America. Necessarily to figure out, wait a second, is this good or is this bad? Hey, people, we need your help in trying to figure this out. It's not just the guys in power here. It's a communication here. There's progress. There's growth. So I don't know. In one sense, we're saying progress is not always good, but in another sense, we're saying there's a good progress. And what that means is kind of still in conversation. And I think we should all consider how that can affect our lives, and just to see how that needs to be talked about amongst us, amidst us. But just kind of a few last remarks. If
this is what I've been thinking of too, is when we start thinking about these AI, new technology, the potential that it has to continue to increase in sophistication and continue to make our lives easier. And even in the medical field, or even in other technologies, like maybe even to extend our lives. I mean, there's people out there talking about like genetically reversing the process of aging. Right? I mean, these are serious. I mean, I feel like that's pretty doubtful, but like there are serious people seriously engaging with these problems. And it's like these kind of transhumanist like ideas, a lot of them are looking for salvation here in this earth. Right? They're trying to so rapidly enhance human life here on this earth that we can kind of find the salvation which we all seek and long for here. But that's never going to be sufficient.
Right.
Even with the most sophisticated AI technologies, even if I could live forever at 25 years old here in this world, I'm never going to be truly free and truly united to God until I participate definitely in a death like his, right? Like death is one of the most powerful instruments. It is the way. There's the great book, I Want to See God by, it's by this,
I Want to See God, Eugene.
Yeah, this Carmelite priest. It's about prayer. It's about the spiritual life. And one of the first quotes is a quote from St. Teresa of Avila. When she was 7 years old, she ran off with her cousin because she wanted to be martyred. And they asked her, why in the world did you do that? And she responded, to see God, I must die. And that was the title of the chapter. To see God, you must die.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, and it's scary, but it's true because it's true in this life. Like we have to die to ourselves continually and self-sacrifice out of love for others, and in order to experience in order to taste the salvation that God has in store for us. But ultimately, like God became a man and suffered and died. And that's like St. Josemaria Escrivá. He says that suffering and hunger and pain and death, those are the greatest treasures that we have on this earth. The angels cannot suffer. We've talked about that before on this show. It's like human beings, we have this capacity to suffer and to unite those sufferings to Christ on the cross, and through that cross to enter into the resurrection of definitive life, not extended life here on earth, not life enhanced by AI intelligence here on earth, but like life with God, in which our bodies will be glorified and will experience not just human wisdom, but the divine wisdom face to face.
Right. And it's not, and what Joey's saying is not to neglect the goods that we're supposed to have here, even the basic
Exactly.
basic goods and needs met here, right? So
Yeah.
like we should have water, we should have clean water, right? We should have running water.
You should pursue health. You should pursue
health.
good, like
Exactly. You should have a glass of
material
wine.
well-being for your family.
You should be able to experience the beauty of God through art. You should be able to experience the beauty of God through music. Like all these things are dignified. But I think, as Joey is saying, if I may emphasize what you say, it's like we look at the cross and we see that the most human thing to be able to do is to love, and to be willing to lay our life down for the other. And that's something a computer will never be able to do, or any sort of technology for that matter.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to love is a uniquely human thing, right?
Yeah.
And love, again, understood in the Christian sense, is not an essential thing.
It's a divine thing.
Exactly. And so, like, here we go again with this emphasis, like, the material world is not the only experience, is not the only reality at play here. There's something profoundly intertwined into the mind of God, into the life of God. And while it is true that technologies provide a lot of positives, and a lot of positives that we can't even flesh out. Yeah, and we'll continue to benefit from the positives that these technologies provide. I think it's also very important to keep in mind that man is also wounded, right? And that we would be foolish to think, the way I said that was weird. We would be foolish to think that we should naively approach these things as if original sin just kind of disappeared, as if man isn't capable of doing awful, awful things with technology, as if we are God, right? And all of a sudden, Jesus Christ dying on the cross is no longer needed, right? No, in fact, Gaudium et Spes 22, Christ reveals man to himself and makes him his vocation clear, right? Christ is the answer. Pontius Pilate has that line, Ecce homo, right? Behold the man. That's the answer to the human heart. And no matter how much technology we produce, we will never be 100% healthy on earth, right? I will consistently stay ugly no matter how much makeup I put on every day in the morning, right? You know that, right? No matter what fate I get this week, there's always gonna be pain and suffering and death. But our Lord didn't promise that he would take those away. He promised that he would unite them to the cross. That's what he promises us, right? And that salvation is found in him and in no other thing or person. Yeah. What do you say, Joey? Please try to add something to that.
I think that's good. I think we said.
I think we have.
And maybe we'll do another episode on this later. Like I'm gonna keep thinking about this. I'm still learning. It's still
we're learning. Yeah.
It's like. But it's serious. It's going to become a part of our world, and we need to be able to confront these things. So we encourage you to be thinking about it too, seriously. And again, just with any new technology that you introduce into your life, into your cultural context, just like do it with a discerning eye and with caution and with prayer, because those are the way. Yeah.
So guys, thank you for tuning into this episode. We hope that you learned something, and above all, we hope that you grew closer to our Lord. Share our stuff, promote our stuff. We got a lot of things coming in, a lot of good new ideas and topics. Continue suggesting things to us. We're here to listen to you. And if that's it, Joey,
then as always,
God bless.